Hi, I'm Jaclyn, and my husband Scott and I took the HypnoBirthing classes at Natural Beginnings when we found out we were pregnant with our second child. And right away I knew that I wanted to do HypnoBirthing classes because I had spoken to Sarah, and I had spoke with her shortly after the birth of my firstborn and talked about the fact that my birth really didn't go the way I had hoped or planned. And I wanted a different experience, and part of that was some fear that I had involved with having another birth. So when I learned that hypnobirthing had a fear release component, I was really interested in that because that was probably my number one concern in my second pregnancy. I'll never forget getting the pregnancy test, and I was so excited, and my second thought was, okay, this baby has to come out of me. So that was definitely something that I wanted to address and make better for myself for my second birth. I know that in the first one, I think it really impacted my labor. I just was scared and I wasn't able to let go. So Sarah and I talked about that quite a bit, and it was just 8 months after my first daughter was born that I found out I was pregnant again. And instead of waiting to the end and saying, I'll just figure this out, we decided to do our childbirth classes pretty early. I was only 9 weeks pregnant when we started. And I think that was one of the keys to my successful birth, because I was able to use the tools that I learned all throughout my pregnancy. And it definitely made a big difference. We started going to classes once a week, and I remember sitting in class when I had just finished my first trimester, and I was feeling better and not as tired and really excited. And we just used or found some useful tools that helped us throughout the next few months. So some of it were things that my husband and I were able to do together to connect with the baby a little bit more. But a lot of it I was doing on my own as part of a nightly ritual. I would put my first daughter to bed, then spend time with my husband, do some work, and then before bed I put on my iPod and headphones, and I did my little meditations every night. I tried to be really good about it. There were a couple weeks where I was super busy and wasn't doing it, but I really believe it made a big difference in the end. And I'll never forget going into labor and starting to feel those like a little bit of those out of control where I didn't have control over calming my body down. And the only way that I really was able to was to get that music back on, visualize my happy place, and think to myself what I needed my breathing to be like to help calm back down. And those were really the main tools that I used. I remember my husband and I had gone on to our honeymoon in Costa Rica, and there was this beautiful beach that we went to, and all throughout my pregnancy I visualized that beach and just being there and what our day was like when we were there and how calm and happy and peaceful it was. And every time I started to feel a little bit out of control with like a big surge coming, I would picture myself on that beach, and I always pictured myself in the ocean riding the waves, and the top of the waves my favorite part. So I kept trying to tell myself, this is the best part, get there and then you can cruise back down. So that definitely helped me throughout the whole time. So my music and my happy place and squeezing my husband's wrist, those were our main keys. So I believe that those were the things that really helped me to be able to stay calm. There were a couple moments when things were moving quickly in my labor and I needed to just kind of lay down, and our contractions started coming like 10 minutes apart, and I was just really in a completely different state. I was aware of everything that was going on, but I was just like eyes closed. I had a mask over my eyes, my headphones on, and I listened to the affirmations, the birthing affirmations. And every time I felt like I was about to feel that out of control, I would hear, your baby is coming to you naturally, you are strong, you can do this. And it was great to just have that right in my ears the whole time. And I really just relaxed and I let go, and within about 5 minutes after that, there she came. So it happened really quickly at the end, and I think the different practices I did with hypnobirthing attributed to that. In the birth of my first child, while I was in labor, I felt that the physicians were kind of giving up on me. and I wasn't expecting that. And so afterwards, after I had my child and we were heading home from the hospital, I'll never forget telling my husband that, one, I was afraid to ever do it again, and two, I felt like I didn't do a good job, and I really struggled with that. So as soon as I found out I was pregnant for the second time, I knew I needed to do that experience over again, and I felt like I needed to kind of reclaim my birth. So when we started talking a little bit more about what kind of birth we wanted, doing some more research, talking to a couple of different people in the community, I was able to kind of put together a different plan for myself. And a lot of that came to fruition while I was taking the HypnoBirthing classes. I was able to learn a little bit more about the details around a home birth, even find a midwife that was supportive of that type of decision, and work with someone that believed in me and knew it was something that I could and my husband could do together. One of the things I liked about hypnobirthing was what it actually did for our marriage, because on our birthing day, it was just me and my husband, and we spent hours in a dark bathroom with me on a birthing ball and listening to peaceful music. And about 24 hours after the baby came, I think we just felt this overwhelming sense of accomplishment that we did this together as a team, and I felt so supported by him. He was there for me every step of the way, and I think he knew more what to expect because we had done the classes, and it just really strengthened us. It really brought us together, and it was that didn't happen in our first birth. So I felt really good about that. And I think part of that was because some of the videos that we watched in class, and he was able to see other fathers and how they were acting, and what maybe I would be looking for when that day came, as opposed to our first birth when we were in a hospital room and a nurse just kind of pulled him over and said, grab her leg, and he really didn't know what to do. He hadn't been prepared for anything. So he felt just uncomfortable in that situation, and fortunately, that's not what we had to do the second time around. Instead, he was just right there with me through the entire laboring process, and I just really felt happy about the way that affected us and brought us together. I think overall, the one thing that drew me closest to hypnobirthing was knowing that there was the fear release component. I think there's so much fear around childbirth today. So many women just think that we can't do it on our own, that we need some type of intervention, and I was just scared for what it was actually going to be like. And I really liked that in hypnobirthing I was able to, one, educate myself a little bit more on what the birthing process was going to be like. Even though this was my second birth, I still felt like there was more to learn. To trust in my body a little bit more, and then actually have a time to write down what my fears were associated with this birth, and kind of just let go of them and say, I'm not going back to that place. They're not going to be things that I'm going to be worried about, and kind of just addressing them up front and then moving past them. And I think that was really important. One of the other things that I liked about hypnobirthing is, first, when I think about hypnobirthing, I don't look back on it as just our birthing day and when I was in labor. I really think about it as like my whole pregnancy I could refer to as hypnobirthing. And I think a lot of that is because I did our classes early, and then it really impacted the rest of my pregnancy in a positive way, of course. Part of that was because I remember, I would maybe be really busy, but I'd put the CD on in my car, and wherever I was traveling to that day, I'd listen to some of the affirmations and just spend that time thinking about our birth and what the labor was going to be like, and maybe one hand on the wheel and one on my belly, if that's safe. That's what I did, and just spending that time to connect with the baby. So there wasn't always a certain time in the day that I would necessarily have to do it, but this was just kind of what worked for me as I went through the 9 months. It kind of evolved. Sometimes I was able to do it at night. I remember sometimes having headphones on while I was at the gym, and that's one of the things that I liked about hypnobirthing. I also liked the fact that it was kind of personalized for me. I could envision my happy place. Some people might think that the rosebud opening is such a great mental picture for them, and you read about that a lot, but for me that doesn't really do much, and I was able to connect more with water and the ocean and a river or waterfalls, or just like things I tended to picture more for me. Hypnobirthing talks about like having like a soothing color, and that was something that I envisioned and wore jewelry of during my pregnancy, because that was just helpful and peaceful for me, and I liked picking something that worked for me. And I think my husband would agree with that as well, because he felt like he was able to be involved in a way that he felt comfortable with without putting too much on us, I guess. And the other part of it that I really liked was just being able to connect with natural beginnings and some of the women here. I can remember the night I thought I was going into labor, calling Sarah to confirm about some breathing practices, and just, you know, knowing that anything that I needed was just a phone call away, and that really means so much.